You know, something I've thought about before, I may have talked about before, but, like, everyone, so, like, I think it's like the N64 was technically more powerful than the original PlayStation, because it had 64 bits instead of 32 like the PlayStation, which I guess, yeah, that would be more powerful. But I don't know, it's like well, same mistake as the first level I did in the previous part or previous playthrough. But there was a lot of games that didn't really say to me that the N64 was more powerful. Like, the graphics were almost never as good as the PlayStation. Like, there's some games that do look better than some places. Like, it's mostly in the exclusive ones, in the exclusive Nintendo games, where things looked a little better. I mean, Mario 64 didn't look as good as Crash, but then again, it was open, whereas Crash is more hallway-like. But you know what I mean. So it's understandable, but you know, it's just something I've thought about. Like, there's a lot of games that came out on N64 and the PS1 where the PS1 version was just so much better than the N64 version. Now, there were some games that were vice versa, where the N64 version is definitely the preferred one. But the PlayStation version is just better in a lot of ways, and I like how that box is going through that where it's not supposed to be. Like, okay, an example. Okay, so some games that came out on both systems were smoother looking on the N64, but they still didn't look as good as the PlayStation version. And there were some levels that were cut and everything, and it just kind of made me think, how is the N64 more powerful than the PlayStation? There just weren't a lot of good examples, I should say. So like an example of a game that's better on the N64 than the PlayStation was Glover. I haven't played the PlayStation version of Glover, but I hear that it's just not as good as like the N64 version. I know that there are like usually loading issues with the you know, when it comes to loading, it's a lot slower on the PlayStation version, whereas the N64 version was a cartridge, so it was more flash based or whatever. So they like, I guess they kind of ran better on the N64, but they never really showed it as much. It seems like it's because they made some cuts here and there. But like, shoot, I whacked away that life, but not really that I needed it, but you know. But the PlayStation, it just felt like it was more powerful than the N64 in a lot of games and stuff. Like, I think the Gex series is a good example of that. Like, Gex 2 and 3 were a lot better on the PlayStation. Even in the graphics, like, I don't think the graphics were as good as the PlayStation version on the N64. And it's supposedly the more powerful console. So, like, it's like there were some cuts they made because it was Nintendo was still going through that we're the more child-friendly, you know, company, so we're gotta make it E, whereas Gex 3 on PS1 was T-rated. You know, it just seems like that, you know, there was a lot of games that just didn't show the N64's power, in my opinion, as well. There were exclusive ones that looked more powerful than some exclusive PS1 games. But, you know, like, okay, one of the best examples of showing the N64's power was Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 on N64 was, like, on N64, it was one cartridge. The whole game was on one cartridge. The PS1 version was on two discs. So you know, now it's possible that at the times they came out, maybe it was just a little different, and Resident Evil 2, like whenever making on PS1, maybe due to time constraints they had to do it on, well, you know, whatever the case is, whatever it is, the N64 version was able to have just it all on one thing, and the PlayStation had to have it on two different things. But other than a few games that were on both systems, I didn't see a lot of the N64's power that a lot of people say it has, and what Nintendo promoted it to have. Let's see. Obviously, both systems seem to be more powerful than... seem to be more powerful than the Sega Saturn, because the Saturn was kind of rushed out, and it was apparently really difficult to program on the thing, but I mean, I don't know for sure if that says, oh, it's, you know... Well, anyway, let's see. So, still going here. Oh, I gotta stretch. Toxic waste. Let's see. Alright. May have to do another recording after this. It'll be my third recording in that one. I really love the remix music of this level in the Insane Trilogy. Sounds really awesome. There's some tracks where it's like not as good or just kind of weird, the instruments they chose for them in the Insane Trilogy with the remixes of the music. But there's a lot of it I actually really like. It really fits. This one, it really fits a lot of the music. Like fits the environments and stuff. And the Insane Trilogy had a lot of fitting ones. There were some though that didn't really fit. Like some of the instruments they chose sounded kind of out of place. Like along with the rest of the music, basically. Like in that place with the spiders and everything. It sounded kind of weird. That was like the Black Widow spiders. It sounded kind of weird because in the Insane Trilogy version they had like some kind of like Roman, almost Roman sounding like trumpet music or whatever music, jazzy, not jazz. I don't know what you call it, but like it was like in this version it was like or something like that, and then like in that version it's like like, you know, just like what was the reason for that? And I got flattened. The toxic waste is, you know, environmental stuff they were really trying to push back in the 90s. It was overdoing it, so. Not to say that there isn't any problem with like people, or like, not saying that there's no problem with people doing any kind of pollution in the environment and stuff, but people make a bigger deal out of it than it really, you know, really is. In my opinion. I'm not trying to get too political though, so I'm just gonna stop right there. I don't even need these lives. Let's see. Well, I'm so used to these games that it didn't feel as weird coming back to this from the Insane Trilogy. Something I just thought about. Oh. Did it come from that way? Oh. Some people, you know, there's a lot of people that seem to have a problem with the Crash Bandicoot in Skylanders Academy, which I have seen the episode that he's in, the episodes that he's in. I gave the show a try, and it's actually okay, believe it or not. But anyway, I'm not trying to review that show right now. The episode with Crash, like the one where he's like kind of the main focus, he did feel kind of shoehorned in some ways, but honestly didn't have much of a problem as a lot of other people seem to have with him in the show. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, they had a problem with him having an Australian accent. He's Australian, so he's gonna have an Australian accent. I realize that the guy in the costume in the old commercials had didn't have an Australian accent, and just because they're from Australia doesn't mean they have to have it. But you know, it'd make more sense. But like, people kind of made a bigger deal out of it than necessary, in my opinion. I think it's also just because of the fact that he talked, whereas in almost everything else he doesn't talk. He may spout one word or two here and there. Like obviously he says "whoa," and in the beginning of this game he said "uh-oh." But I didn't have much of a problem with him talking in Crash, or in the Skylanders Academy. And it was fitting with the Australian accent. I'm not saying he had the best lines that he said, but when he said extreme for a lot of stuff, but, you know. But anyway, thanks for watching this part, and I'll keep it here, start another recording, and try to finish this game, because, you know. Anyway, thanks for watching, subscribe if you want to, like this video if you want to, and all that jazz, and you'll hear me next time.